We were looking at Genesis 1, verses 1 and 2. And we looked at Psalms 119, verse 160, and it says this: the word is true from the beginning. And the Hebrew words are like this: the beginning of thy word is true. So the very first verse in the Bible, God is telling us his word is true. Now, we know modern man, with all the intelligence they have, with all the scientific breakthroughs, have always been trying to prove that God doesn't exist. But that is not true, and we're going to find out. Now, John 5, and verses 1 to 18, Christ had healed somebody on the Sabbath, and the Jewish people around really criticized him, persecuted him verbally, and this is what he said to them: his Father is God, he was the Son of God, and they both work. So there are two members of the God family, and that's from Christ's mouth. Now, when we look at Psalms 45, verses 6, Psalms 11, verse 4, and Revelation 5, 6, 8, and 11, we see God's throne room. We see the temple that he's living in. And this is where creation actually started from. As we heard, they both were working. And the Word, which was the Logos for the Father, right, and we know all things were created by Christ, they created the angelic kingdom, the cherubims, Michael, Gabriel, and Lucifer, the seraphims, the 4 living creatures, and the 24 elders, who are God's wise and intelligent counselors, and millions of other angels that serve and control the universe. Now, how does that sound to you? Does that sound like that's what God did? All right. What we're doing is we're looking at the first 2,500 years of the Bible. All right. And what I want to read to you is this. This volume represents the first crude attempt to put the history of the earliest ancient times based on the Bible into a story form. The main sources for this material are the Bible and the 2-volume compendium of world history. The reader is cautioned that the incomplete account presented here should not be by any means regarded as the final and authoritative word on the subject. It must be emphasized that this is merely an initial attempt at telling the actual story that went in the distant past. Much research remains to be done. However, what has been gathered into these pages will help provide a general overall concept as to what was really taking place in the centuries before and after the flood. Certainly a more accurate concept than modern day history provides. Dr. Hay has stated the time is coming when all history books will be rewritten, although this monumental task will not be completed till the world tomorrow is here. The work has already begun in earnest. And so, this is what we say. Now, verse 2 identifies a second time period. All right. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. Now, the Hebrew translation is like this: the earth had become chaotic, undistinguishable ruin. Darkness was upon the face of the muddy ocean depths. So verse 1, we saw a perfect universe created. In verse 2, we see a picture of chaos, complete destruction. So let's see what really happened, and think of it sort of about reading in between the lines, so to speak.
Yeah.
Ezekiel 28, verses 11 to 17, Isaiah 14, verse 12, and Revelation 4 talk about this. They talk about Lucifer being a perfect created angel, right, who had high authority. He had riches. He had command. He was given a great responsibility. But he became an adversary to God, to Christ, to the Logos. He was a liar, and 1/3 of the angels followed him. They believed him. And as a result, the battleground was the entire universe. The plants, the insects, and the animals were buried, all right? The geologists find fossils in the layers. They find bones, they find dinosaurs, but they cannot find man at that particular point. He didn't exist. Now, picture this. The earth had volcanoes that were erupting. They were erupting in the oceans, the seas, they were erupting on land. And we saw the picture, the way it was muddy, the waters were muddy, right? So picture this, Pompeii, how fast the entire city was covered with ashes, right? May 18 of 1980, Mount St. Helens erupted, and when it erupted, it destroyed 230 square miles. And then there's one more. June 15, 1991, Pinatubo in the Philippines sent into the stratosphere SO2, sulfur dioxide. 22 million tons went into the atmosphere, and when it formed with the water vapor up there, the droplets were sulfuric acid. That cloud that blocked the sunlight cooled the parts of the earth by 0.5 degrees Celsius in certain parts, or 32.9 degrees Fahrenheit. And that was in certain parts of the earth, that's how much it cooled it by. So, let us now read the last part of verse 2. The last part of verse 2, we see God was hovering over the face of the waters. In verse 3, God begins to restore the earth to livable conditions. So Genesis 1, verses 2 to 5, this is what we see. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters, and God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness, and God called the light day, and the darkness night. The evening and the morning were the first day. I got a question for you. What happened? Do we really know what happened? Consider this. God cleaned up the atmosphere, removed the darkness that was covering the earth, and allowed the sunlight to reach it. And then he also made the earth rotate. Thus, the first day. So now we look at verse 6. God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. One mile is 1.609 kilometers. The ozone is 40 miles, or 64.378 kilometers. And this is what it looks like. All right? This is our atmosphere. You can see this later on. There are different layers of the atmosphere. The troposphere is 7 miles, the stratosphere is 31 miles, the mesosphere is 50 miles, the thermosphere is 440 miles, and the exosphere is 6,200 miles. Now, I didn't realize this was going to happen, but the messages I gave in the summertime actually pertain to what I'm doing right now. I had mentioned to you The Creator in the Cosmos, the book. I read from that book, and that book was by Hugh Ross. It explained that the earth is a miracle. The atmosphere on the earth is a total miracle. Everything has to be so perfect. If something is just off a little, man cannot survive one way or the other. Food cannot grow one way or the other. That's how precise it has to be. So now let's continue. Let's look at verse 9. And God said, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, gathering of the water seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, the fruit tree yielding fruit after its kind, whose seed in itself upon the earth, and it was so. And the earth brought forth the grass, and the herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw that it was good, and the evening and the morning were the third day. Now, what happened is he raised the land up. The water was covering the earth. There was muddy water all over the place. And as raising the land up, and it becomes dry, the waters now go down. They create the oceans. They create the seas, the rivers. And this was necessary in order for man to survive. This was necessary in order for food to grow. Now, this particular food was not there when Lucifer was ruling over the earth, making it ready for man. And they can't find, the evolutionists cannot find anything pertaining to it. Again, everything, it had to be buried immediately because otherwise it would have rotten. And that's the reason why they can find the fossils. Now, let's look at something. Verse 14. God said, let there be lights in the firmament of heaven to divide the day from the night. Let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days, for years, and let them be for lights in the firmament of heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. So God made two great lights in the firmament of heaven to give light upon the earth, and it was so. God made two great lights. The greater light to rule the day, the lesser light to rule the night. He made stars also, and God set them in the firmament of heaven to give light upon the night, to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good, and the evening and the morning were the fourth day. Now, back in verse 2 to 5, didn't we already read this? Is that what God did back then? I mean, he did let the light shine, and he made the earth rotate. But verse 17 really tells us what God did. But when we look at verse 3 in the Hebrew, the word for let means allow. Allow the sun to reach the earth. And we look at verse 14 in the Hebrew. It means let manifest what was previously in existence. And then we look at verse 16. The Hebrew word for made was appointed or ordained. Let them be for signs, for seasons, and for days, and for years. God's lunar calendar. And what this means is he put everything back where it was originally. Now, again, in the summer, I talked about the Maseroth, all right? Now, we sing, now the Maseroth, God has in the Bible, the Pleiades and the belt of Orion are in the Bible. Now, most of us know this as the horoscope. That's the name the pagans call it. That's the name what people, were told it was, the horoscope. But it doesn't say that. It actually has another message, if you understand. And I gave that as a sermon in the summertime. All right. Now, let them be for signs and for seasons, for days and for years. God's lunar calendar. We sing hymns. We sing a hymn which is great. It says, "Great God who made the universe and knows the stars by name." All right. And he does. He did. He put them back where they belong. And then we have another hymn, which is 11. "The heavens God's glory do declare." Now, with all this, we see Genesis as it's written in the book. But now we can sort of start to see Genesis as to what God actually did, right? It's how do I explain this? Here's the firmament, all right? You could see the troposphere. You could see the stratosphere, the mesosphere, the thermosphere, and the exosphere, all right? This is our area where we live, all right? This over here with some rock, this over here prevents meteors from coming to Earth. And this is where the space stations and the rockets go. That's the atmosphere. That's where we live in, all right? This planet is so perfect, all right? It was designed to be as such. This is a total miracle. Now, there's only so much time I can do, so I will end it right here. And the next time I speak to you, I will finish Genesis.